welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everybody. This is Evelyn over at Syosset Public Library. Turn the Page. I'm a reader services librarian, and today we are very lucky to have with us Eric Nguyen, who wrote his debut novel called Things We Lost to the Water. And Eric earned an MFA in creative writing from McNeese State University in Louisiana. He's been awarded fellowships from Lamba Literary, Voices of Our Nation's Art, and the Tin House Writers Workshop. He's the editor-in-chief of diacritics.org. He lives in Washington, D.C. And as I said, Things We Lost to the Water is his first novel. So thank you, Eric, for coming on. We really appreciate it. And we love having you here at Turn the Page for Syosset Public Library. So how are you today?
I am really good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. So your book is amazing. So well written. I cannot believe it's a debut novel. That is just fascinating. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, I'm a second generation Vietnamese American. My parents came here after 1975 and the end of the Vietnam War. For the longest time, I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know how to be a writer. So I eventually found out that you can go to school to be a writer. So I moved down to Louisiana for about 3 years, and it was there I was kind of forced to write my novel as my thesis. And my novel really came from that time in Louisiana when I traveled back and forth between my school and New Orleans. In New Orleans, I found a Vietnamese community there, and I learned a lot from them. And I kind of used that community to tell this story about Vietnamese American immigrants. Partly it's biographical, you could say, because it's based on not specifically my parents' experience, but the refugee experience as a whole. And more specifically, it's about a Vietnamese refugee and her 2 children who moved to New Orleans and how they build a new life there.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that people can come over to this country barely speaking a word of English and be able to make it. I can't imagine going somewhere else, not knowing the language, not knowing where I'm going. Just obviously they went on a boat, so that's part of the water, the title. So how did we come up with the title?
I guess actually the original title of the book was not Things We Lost to the Water. But I sat with my agent and editor. We tried to get to a more specific title, and then we kind of noticed like this theme of water and loss, and we stumbled upon, like during brainstorming, that title, and it just felt perfect for the book.
Yeah, and I love the cover. The cover is great. It's a young boy. Well, not so young, actually. An older, right? How old would you say he is in the cover?
I'm not sure, like 20s.
Yeah,
maybe?
splashing water on his face.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's sort of autobiographical, but not really?
Not really. I would say the autobiographical part are like really vague. Like my family came here to the US after the war. There's a gay character in it who likes to write. But otherwise it's mostly, I guess, made up. It's fiction.
Okay, that's great. So that Vietnamese, did you grow up in a Vietnamese community like the one here?
Not really. In the DC area, there's a small Vietnamese American population, but my family wasn't really part of that community. We were kind of away from that community, which was why I found the Vietnamese American community in New Orleans so intriguing and exciting, because like they are a really tight-knit group of people.
Your character in the book is picked on a lot. That broke my heart. That just was, I was like, it's so hard to assimilate and move into a community that's not all Vietnamese.
Yeah, I think again it's like partially autobiographical. Like in the book, the kid is getting bullied.
Yeah.
And like in one scene, he's like someone sneaks like cockroaches in his food, and like that
That
didn't
was
happen.
that was so horrible. Did that really happen? Please tell me that didn't happen.
That didn't happen to
Oh,
me.
good.
But I think like growing up, like I came from like a different family, from different family background for everyone else, and
Okay.
like when I was younger, like people made fun of the food I brought. So like I was kind of ashamed of that. So like from then on, like I asked my parents to like only make me peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Sure.
That's all I want. So I can relate to the character, even though his experience is not, it's kind of more extreme than mine.
Okay. Did you have a younger brother or an older brother?
I have a younger brother, yes.
Oh, okay. So you just the two of you also, just like in the book?
I mean, his character is not like based. I mean, the character I have in the book is not based on him. I
Okay.
guess it's just another character to me. I'm not sure like how I got to these characters. I felt like at one point they just felt like a different family from mine, and they got their own stories.
So what was your research like for this book?
My research was really going to New Orleans a whole lot, just kind of get immersed in the culture of that city. It's a very unique city compared to like a lot of other American cities, just because it has a long history of different cultures mixing together. And also part of that research experience was also going to the Vietnamese American community there and talking to the Vietnamese American people there. So it was like on the ground kind of field research. I talked to them at first. They were very hesitant to talk to me about their life because like I'm this outsider. But I
Mhm.
think once I told them my own story, what I was trying to research, really, they really opened up to me about their own experiences.
Did you also go to back to Vietnam? Have you been there?
I've been back to Vietnam, I mean, to Vietnam, but that was when I was a teenager. So
Okay.
that was like years before I started writing this book. But I think that informed my writing of the book, especially the scenes about Vietnam, the ones that take place in Vietnam.
Hmm. Yeah. Have your parents been back?
They have been back multiple times.
Uh-huh.
So like I guess I've lived through their experience of Vietnam.
Right, right. It's incredible to me that people, like I said before, I just can't imagine putting myself in another country after living here for all these years. I just, it's amazing to me how people, I mean, she really struggled though. Your main character, the mother in the book. It was very hard for her to bring up her two boys.
Yeah, I think that's a struggle like many immigrants have, especially immigrants who come from countries that don't like speak English. They have that language barrier. And like for refugees, most often they have to start all over again. And I think I kind of made it extra difficult for my character in that she has two sons to support and she's by herself. Her husband is kind of lost. So I think for her, her story is, I wouldn't say it's unique, in that a lot of refugees have these unique kind of stories that are similar. So I don't think her experience is unique, just particular in a way.
Right, right. I think it's pretty much across the board. Even Americans struggle with their teenagers. So you don't even have to be a refugee for that to happen. That happens to everybody. It's very hard to bring up children. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I just want to say that the book got some awards. So it was one of President Obama's favorite books of the year. It was the winner of the Crooks Corner Book Prize for Best Debut Novel Set in the American South. It was longlisted for the Aspen Words Literary Prize. It was a Christian Science Monitor Best Book of the Year, an Atlanta Journal Constitution Top 10 Southern Book of the Year, a Chicago Public Library Best Book of the Year, and named one of the 15 books to watch for by the New York Times. And the New York Times also gave it a very nice review. And also on Booklist, it got a starred review. So for a debut novel, that's absolutely fabulous. I mean, you can't be any prouder than that.
Yeah, it's been wild. Like when you write this book, the writing experience is such a solitary,
Right.
lonely activity that once it's out in the world, you kind of can't believe that people are reading it. And it's such a joyous surprise that people actually like it.
How long did it take you to write the book?
About 7 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you wrote it while you were in grad school?
Yeah, I did start in grad school. Grad school was 3 years long, and then I guess I worked 4 more years on it before it was ready.
And what were you doing for an income in between?
I was working for a nonprofit in like communications work, so still writing, but a different kind of writing.
Okay, are you just an author now? Not just an author, I don't mean it like that. It says that what are you doing also besides writing?
Well, I also have a day job,
Okay,
and I also edit a website called thecritics.org, and there we publish creative writing stories and artist profiles about the Vietnamese diaspora as well as the Southeast Asian diaspora.
okay, very nice, good. Are you writing your second novel?
Yeah, I am. I'm not telling anyone about it just because like I'm kind of superstitious,
Okay,
the
okay,
writing process.
okay, so when do you have time to write?
I actually wake up like early each morning around 4:30 to 5. And it was that time, like I usually get a couple hours to write, and I keep that schedule.
Every day?
Weekdays. So
Okay,
weekends
you
are free.
take the weekend off.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Very nice. Is that the New York Times I see behind you? Is that
Yes,
the
it is.
review?
Yes, it is.
Very nice. That's great. And what's on the other side?
It's the Instagram post from Obama showing his favorite reads for summer.
That must have been unbelievable when you saw that.
Yeah, it was wild. Like I kept on checking it to make sure like I was there. It was like kind of a dreamy haze, I would say.
Yeah. Have you heard from him?
No, not personally.
Well, he should reach out to authors that he loves. I do. He certainly should. But
Yeah.
that's really nice. That must have made the book sales go way up, huh?
Yeah, and just like knowing that he read it, it's like I guess I can't imagine it. Like just imagine him going to a bookstore, picking it up and
Yeah.
reading it and liking it. It's wild.
Well, we've seen pictures of him with the girls going to bookstores. He really, likes his indie bookstores, and it's amazing. I mean, that has to make you feel so proud that one
It
of
does.
the, and he's
Yeah.
a very well-read man. So it's pretty wonderful for that. That's really great. So when you did write this book, did you have trouble getting an agent, or was that something pretty easy? They read your book and said, "This is fabulous. We have to get this out there."
Um, I guess it was kind of difficult in that sense that I had to go out and like write all these query letters, and like some did get rejected. Some agents like, hey, let me read more, give me the whole manuscript. But then they decided they didn't, I guess they couldn't sell it, or they didn't think it was there yet. But eventually I think it was like my 6th or 7th query letter. I sent it to this agent and she really liked it and I signed on. So I think
That's not bad at all. From what,
Yeah.
I've spoken to a lot of authors. Your 6th or 7th try is pretty amazing. That's really fabulous. That's great. That's really great. The book came out during the pandemic?
yes,
Were you able to do a tour, or it was all virtual?
it was all virtual events. But the cool thing about that is that I could kind of travel around the country virtually. So I
Right.
got an event in Washington State one day, and the next day I have an event in New York. So that was really cool to have.
Yeah. That's what we've heard from most authors, that, well, especially like right now, for instance, you and I probably wouldn't be talking if it wasn't
Yeah.
for the pandemic, and Zoom became the hottest thing that we could all be on and speak. So we're able to interview authors all over the country, which is a wonderful thing. It's the only silver lining of all of the pandemic, is how we're able to speak to authors all over the place and get this out to our patrons. So the book just came out in paperback,
Yes.
which is wonderful. For all our patrons that are listening, it is available on Overdrive, Libby, in both the ebook version and the audiobook version. I was listening to the audiobook. That's fabulous. It's really great. Did you have a say in who did the audiobook?
Yeah, I listened to a couple of like samples from narrators, and the narrator for this one, I felt like her pronunciation of the Vietnamese was like really great. I mean, it's important to get the names right, and I think
Yeah.
she does a great job, I guess, between the voices of the characters and really like reads with the emotion that I had in my head of what this would sound like. So I think she was a great choice.
Yeah, no, she's very good. The audiobook narrator, she was wonderful. I'm a big audiobook listener. Do you listen to audiobooks too? Is that something you enjoy?
For a while I haven't, but I think during the pandemic, I kind of use audiobooks more. I feel like that's a great way to get books read, especially if you're not like actively sitting down and reading it. Like you could do it while you're working out, for example. So I think audiobooks are very convenient. And sometimes I feel like storytelling is always like an oral tradition kind of thing.
Mhm.
So I feel like listening to audiobooks is like very natural to the way like the brain is programmed to like to absorb stories.
Right, right. So when you wrote this book, I've asked all my authors that I've interviewed, are you a planner or a pantser? Was this book very much outlined, or it just took you and you wrote?
Well, I think I always knew the end of the book, so I knew
Okay.
that plan to go there. But really, I didn't really plan anything else except for the ending. I just kind of worked my way through the timeline between like 1975, 2005, which are the book ends of the novel. And my job was to fill in that space, the spaces between those years. And it kind of all worked. I mean, there's some chapters that didn't make it into the final that really didn't work. But overall, I think the writing of it was really unplanned. It's in the revision that you kind of see where everything goes and kind of refine it.
Mhm. Were you in New Orleans during Katrina?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you must have done a lot of research for that too, right?
Yeah, a lot of it was researched through books, archives, like newspaper clippings, and also like news coverage from the time of like
Right.
how the news covered it, like as it happened. So I thought that was really important to get that event right because that event was so huge and it impacted so many people. I really wanted to get that right.
Right, and it's also pretty much relevant, like now, people all experienced it and know what was going on. So what year did you say your parents came here? After the war, you said they?
Yeah, after the war, so post 1975, I don't really have a date just because like they never told me
Yeah,
like the specifics. So I'll just say 1975 after that.
that wasn't
Um,
something that was talked about in your house?
yeah, my family was really quiet about their
Yeah.
past. Whenever us kids tried to bring it up, they kind of told us like that didn't matter. You're in America now and just study hard and push forward. That the future is more important than the past. I guess that was
Wow,
what was in their head.
wow, that's interesting. Okay. Do you speak Vietnamese?
I speak it not really well. I feel like I understand it more than I speak it. So like my parents would speak like Vietnamese to me. I understand them. I would speak English back to them and they understand it. So it's kind of a bilingual household in that sense.
It's like my parents spoke Yiddish when they didn't want the kids to understand what they were saying. Did they do that kind of stuff too, or they wanted you to know the language?
Oh, I mean, we kind of know the language, but I guess they use more difficult words when
Mhm.
like so that we don't understand. Like me and my siblings that we kind of know like up to probably third grade level of Vietnamese. So like if they talk like adults, I guess like we have a hard time understanding.
Okay. You know what? It's really too bad. That's what happens a lot because they want the kids to become Americans. They don't teach them what they knew. And everybody should really be bilingual. And you learn so much, you learn a language easier when you're younger. So like kids should be brought up that way. And it's too bad that, parents who came over, I guess, having bad experiences want to forget about it and don't want to have the kids learn about what happened. It happened a lot with the Holocaust survivors also.
Yeah.
They didn't want their kids to know anything about it. They just wanted them to do well in the new place that they were living. So I get it. I get it. So how did the Vietnamese community, what did they think about your book?
So far, I've only heard like good things. They like the book. A lot of people in the Vietnamese community, especially my age, and probably younger, they felt like, in a way, like they feel represented, because we have these characters who are second generation, who are born in the US and are trying to grapple with their parents' history as well as their own future. So I got that a lot. Yeah, I think that's thing that touched me the most. That this individual story that I kind of wrote by myself, kind of in isolation, can speak to people. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Okay, that's great. Have you heard from any famous people that have read the book?
Um, I mean, Obama said he liked it on
Right, right. Any chance of it becoming a movie?
Um, not that I know of. I mean, like, if any directors are listening, uh, let me know.
Yeah, okay. No,
Yeah.
because a lot of times books have, that happens. That's what most movies come from.
Yeah.
It's written from books before. Okay. So it's been lovely chatting with you. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to hearing from you again. And the book that you are writing, even though you don't want to tell us anything about it, when do you plan that it should be out in the world?
Eventually, I don't have a
Oh,
timeline.
you don't have a timeline, no?
Yeah, because like I don't plan my book, so I just write it until like I feel it's the ending.
That's okay. So you're not on any deadline, I guess.
Not really, no.
Okay. That's a good thing. That's a
Yeah.
good thing that you don't have the pressure of a deadline.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's also about Vietnamese
Yes. So,
experience.
the Vietnamese American experience. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us. This has been Turn the Page with Evelyn and Eric Nguyen, who wrote his first novel, Just Things We Lost to the Water. So we thank you for being with us on Syosset Library's Turn the Page. We're going to close this chapter. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you for having me.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.